In the previous exercise, we took a look at how the Windows Server 2003 Performance tool could be used to monitor live performance statistics on the machine. However, in some cases you'll want to actually monitor performance over longer periods of time. For example, you might want to monitor a file server over the course of a week or two. In this exercise, we'll take a look at how we can use the Windows Performance tool to track performance over longer periods of time. So I'll begin by clicking on Start, Run, and running the perfmon utility. This will open up the system monitor as we saw before. However, for the sake of this exercise, we're interested in the options under the Performance Logs and Alerts section. Within this section, you'll notice that there are counter logs, trace logs, and alerts. In this exercise, we're going to create a new counter log. You'll notice that by default, Windows Server 2003 includes a system overview counter log that's created by default. This is just used as an example that you can use to monitor some basic performance statistics. In addition, I've created an item called long-term monitoring. For this exercise, we're going to create a new log setting. We'll create a new log and choose the settings from an existing file. This is the file that we created in the previous exercise. Here I'm going to choose the System Performance Monitoring HTML file that was created by System Monitor in the previous exercise. I'll see a dialog box that tells me that some of the properties from the System Monitor log file may not apply to counter objects. I'll go ahead and click OK to continue. And we'll call this Server Monitoring Test. Here on the properties of the Server Monitoring Test file, you'll be able to see that it's already automatically imported all of the counters and objects that we specified for monitoring with the basic file that we had before. So for example, you'll see that the objects of logical disk, memory, network, objects, paging file, and finally server are already included in this list. In addition, I can add additional objects and counters as I want for the monitoring performance. Now the default setting is to collect data every second, and in general this is probably a little bit too much information that you want to track if you're tracking data over the course of, let's say, days or weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and change this for the sake of our exercise to 5 seconds. However, on a production server you might want to change this to a higher value. For example, you might want to measure performance statistics every 10 seconds or so. Next, we'll need to specify where the actual data that we're creating is going to be stored. So let's go ahead and click on the Log Files tab. Now I can store the data, performance statistics data, in a binary file, in a text file in either comma or tab delimited formats, in a binary circular file, which is basically a collection of files that can be written to in a circular fashion, or finally to a relational SQL database. For the sake of this exercise, we're going to choose the simplest option, which is a single binary file. Next, I'm going to click on the Configure button, and I want to specify the location in which the log files will be stored. So I'll go ahead and choose the E:\data folder. On this dialog box, I can also specify the maximum size for these binary log files that I'm creating. The default setting is maximum limit, which means that the file will be used continuously until you run out of disk space. However, I could specify, for example, that the log files should be automatically closed after 50 megabytes of data is collected. In this exercise, I'm going to go ahead and choose to leave it at a maximum limit because we're not going to be collecting a large volume of information. To save this setting, I'll click on OK. Next, there are options that show that I can automatically name files based on a specific format. For example, I can end file names with specific numbers, or I can use month, day, hour, minute, and year formats so that I can track my performance by date. In this case, I'll go ahead and just choose to use the numeric option and start numbering at the number 1. The final set of options that we're going to look at are under the Schedule tab. This basically specifies when I want to start the log, when I want to stop the log, and if I want to run a command at the end of after the log is finished capturing its data. So in this case, I'm going to choose to manually start it and manually stop it. But notice that I can also specify a time. For example, if I want to record server performance during my backup window, which might be at 2 a.m., I can schedule my performance monitoring to start just before that time. I can also schedule it to stop after a period of, for example, a couple of hours, or I could choose to monitor for a certain number of days. In the real world, it's a good idea to set these options because you don't want to leave performance monitoring running indefinitely. You'll use up valuable disk space and you might also decrease overall system performance as well. To save the settings for the new counter log, I'll go ahead and click on OK. For the next step here, I'll go ahead and click on the server monitoring log that we created, and I'll go ahead and manually start it. You'll notice that the icon will turn from red to green, showing that the data is currently being collected. And in the log file name column, you'll actually see the file that the data is being stored in. So what's going on here is the system monitor is actually tracking this data and saving the statistics into a binary log file. In order to have enough data for analysis, I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and we'll come back in a few minutes and take a look at the data that we've collected. Okay, several minutes have elapsed and it's time to go ahead and stop the recording of data. So I'll click on the stop button, and that'll close the file so that we can use it for later analysis. Our next step is actually to analyze the data that we've collected. To do this, let's go ahead and click on the System Monitor. You'll notice that by default, as expected, System Monitor is showing live performance information. But we want to view the information from the file that we created. So to do that, I'll click on the View Log Data button. Notice that the current data source is current activity. Instead, we want to choose log files. I'm going to click the Add button to specify which files I want to look at. Here's the server monitoring test .blg file that we created earlier. So I'll go ahead and choose to open that. By clicking on the Time Range button, I can actually view the range of time that's been used to collect data. So you'll notice that there's roughly 10 minutes of data here. By dragging this timeline, I can actually filter down the data to the exact details that I want to see, down to the minute or second of information that I want to see. But for the sake of this exercise, we'll view as much information as has been captured. Next, we need to specify exactly which data we want to monitor. So let's go ahead and click on the Data tab. Now here you'll see the counters that are currently added to the System Monitor display. And in this case, there aren't any. So we'll click the Add button to add some of them. Now this screen looks similar to the Add Counters option that you saw in the regular System Monitor. However, this time the only options that you'll have available for objects are the ones that we recorded earlier. So let's go ahead and choose the logical disk objects, choose the memory objects, and we'll choose server. So we're viewing various areas of information. We'll go ahead and add these to our list, and then click the Close button. Now when we click OK, the information that's displayed is whatever was captured during the period that we actually specified in the time range section. So this isn't live data, and you'll notice that no new information is being collected. This is a great way to be able to view the information over a long period of time, which can sometimes be weeks or even months if you're troubleshooting very difficult problems. So in this case, you can see that there's many different ways in which you can use the System Monitor. In this exercise, we use the counter log to store data over a longer period of time, and then we use System Monitor to view and analyze that data.